Welcome to Leaders Legacy. I'm your host Varsha Sarkar, and the topic for today is performance management for employee engagement and retention. Our guest for today is Paul James Griffith, who is the VP of Global HR Operations at Kaleyra. Welcome to our show, Paul.
Thank you very much. And may I wish you and your viewers a happy Diwali.
Thank you so much. Paul, I wanted to understand what role does effective performance management have in employee engagement and retention within an organization?
Yeah, it's very interesting role, encompasses quite a lot. So let me try and break it down. So I think an effective performance management plan allows employees ultimately to have clarity in their role, their responsibilities, and the things that they need to deliver. It also allows leaders to manage the expectations of their employees and their teams. I always liken performance management to rowing a boat, and in the UK, we always have a very successful rowing team. The main thing when you're rowing is that when you're rowing, you only face where you've been.
Right.
Only person that faces the way in which the boat travels is the cox, the person who is giving the instructions.
Right.
So it's really important their instructions are clear, that they ensure correct cadence and rhythm of performance of the team, and they switch up and down a gear as required, and making sure also that they don't crash into other boats. This is something that we need to take as a lesson and learn as leaders, that we're often the ones that are the only people that are seeing the endpoint and the
Right.
goal of the organization. The importance, of course, is to allow the people that work in our teams to know their role, to make sure that they've got the ability to question, to understand clearly what's expected of them and what their role does to contribute to the overall goal. Also, allowing them to be architects of their future so that they have a clear roadmap of their development, of the way in which the organization values contribution, and also how they can grow. Also, lastly, just thinking about the other people within their team and the other team members and how they interact. And communication is always something that's brought to my attention, and communication is always absolutely critical. But lastly, when you're coxing a boat, you don't adopt a dictatorial style, you adopt a coaching style. Small corrections, regularly given, praise given when something goes well, and also making sure that those clear instructions allow for feedback.
Right.
Sometimes when we're in the middle of something, we don't seek feedback. If we seek feedback while something has happened, it's much less likely to go wrong in the end. We can correct things and adjust things as we go. People make mistakes. Sometimes people are not clear on what they're required to do. As a manager and a leader, we have to take that responsibility and try and work back on that and bring things back to a slower pace. And I think that's something that works very well for me. Hopefully, I answered your question.
Yes, the rowing was a beautiful anecdote. How do you think performance management system can be designed in a way that there is a system of continuous feedback and professional development rather than just annual reviews?
Yeah, well, I don't like the annual review. And I don't think anybody likes the annual review, especially not managers. If you have a large team, it's a huge, huge task to go through 30 or more people and conduct a meaningful performance review at the end of the year. Equally, you've left it so long that it's really hard to recall what happened throughout that year. Equally, things change throughout the year. And there is nothing more demotivating for an employee or a team member than to be judged on something that changed midway and they couldn't succeed.
Yes.
Systems are great, but systems are not the only way of doing this. We have implemented Workday in the last 2 years. And what I've done is made sure that it's just a facilitator for a very simple method of evaluation. And something that people can actually reflect on themselves prior to meeting with their managers on a much more regular basis. So regular conversations need to be coordinated, as far as I'm concerned, at least quarterly. So lots of companies, as I know, and I've worked in many of them and speak to my colleagues and peers, wait for a year-end review.
Mhm.
Even if you do 2 a year and have a midway review, there's a lot of time between those meetings where things can go off track. Managers have to take a responsibility to raise this question whenever they meet with their people,
Right.
and to have these regular meetings where they set aside a few minutes at the end of the call to say, let's just reflect on your performance review. How are we doing? Tell me any roadblocks or issues you might be facing at the moment and what I can do to help. Very
Right.
simple questions. Putting that into a longer term system design is quite easy. And if you look at teams that utilize Scrum, they do this really well in things called sprints. You know,
Mhm.
they work to a sprint. At the end of the sprint, there's a review that occurs. If you think in that way as a manager, you'll do things as they happen. And for me, real-time coaching and real-time performance management is the key. Working it into a system is simple because you can set as many of those checkpoints as you want.
Mhm.
But the training is ultimately very important, giving people confidence to be able to have these open conversations whenever they're needed.
Right. Coming to managers, in what ways do you think managers can provide constructive feedback uh, and set clear performance goals so that the employees remain, the morale is boosted and they continue to perform well?
Yeah, well, I mean, just to promote growth
Mhm.
and a constant, continuous improvement culture. Don't seek to blame,
Mhm.
seek to find solutions. I mean, that is something we hear so often. Where employees, seek out positive feedback and constructive criticism from their leaders openly.
Right.
So they're not waiting for it. They can seek it out. They can ask that question. I mentioned that
Mhm.
earlier. Allow them to raise it, seek feedback. This will ensure that you get a much more results orientated culture. You need to find focus together. You need to be culpable,
Mhm.
and of course that doesn't apply in all instances, but it is ridiculously important. I mean, I think you get to a point where people are seeking the feedback.
Mhm.
They understand the strategy. Now, companies are really good at working up a fantastic overarching strategy and all the imperatives that fall underneath it. What they don't do generally is work on the organizational capability. And both of those areas have to be absolutely homogenous. They
Right.
have to work together. You can't have one without the other. Having a strategy that no one understands or is afraid to ask questions about is
Mhm.
not going to move you towards high performance or anywhere near it. There's a big difference between conscripted employees and those that are willing, thinking participants. Getting to that stage increases morale because people
Mhm.
feel valued. They are committed because they understand the overall plan and the role they play within it.
Right. So as we all know that like in the current scenario, a lot of companies are shifting towards remote or hybrid work, especially after all the COVID scene. So in terms of performance management, what are unique challenges that arise in such environments?
Well, look, it's really difficult. Management became really difficult, and in some areas, even more difficult. Let's take IT for instance, or information technology, as they are programmers, maybe developers,
Mm-hmm.
systems architects. They can work alone. That's kind of encouraged that distance. What
Mm-hmm.
we have to do is bring the closeness back, and we have to change that proximity and bring people back into the organization.
Right.
Managers have to be even better than they were before at managing their people. In a remote setting, you need regular discussions, and these feedback sessions can be incredibly useful for engaging the folk, even if they're not in the office.
Right.
Setting a time for a regular catch up is really important. So I'll give you an example. My team,
Mm-hmm.
of which I have a large team, I
Mm-hmm.
have a individual 1 hour meeting with every single one of my direct reports every week.
Mm-hmm.
And then every 2 weeks, I have a team meeting for my direct reports.
Okay.
Equally, others from the team can join. We set that, and even if there isn't much to talk about on that occasion, it's an opportunity for us to get together
Mhm.
to talk about something that is happening within the organization. It might not be
Mhm.
something pertaining to HR, it might be something pertaining to another area, but we will use that time and we will keep it. We
Right.
don't change it, we don't delete that from our calendars. We are there, we are present, and
Mhm.
we're engaged. And that is really important. Equally, finding good reasons to get together is ultimately going to make this a success. People will come to the office or will come and meet with their manager if there is something interesting or there is something that they need to contribute to, or they're going to get information.
Right.
So, getting information, gaining knowledge is always a great motivator for people to join a collaboration space or to get teams together to interact. I find it incredibly useful to find a subject or a reason for that particular opportunity to get together.
Mhm.
Um, Hopefully that helps.
Yes, definitely. Paul, being an HR leader, can you share a personal story where of improving engagement and reducing employee turnover through effective performance management?
Yeah, I mean, look, Kaleyra has grown through acquisition and
Mm-hmm.
recently been acquired ourselves by Tata
Yes.
Communications, which is really exciting, I must say. And at the moment, we've still got original people or pre-existing employees that joined us
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 companies ago. Okay, so I'll give you an example. We've got a knock team in the Dominican Republic.
Mm-hmm.
Really successful example because um, they all had different positions when we acquired their company. So we
Okay.
acquired a country and a company. We've moved those positions around.
Mm-hmm.
We've managed to achieve great performance from the team and through individuals, not just based on the managers who have managed to build strong relationships with the team, mostly
Mm-hmm.
through open communication. People didn't feel communicated in their previous organization. They now feel that we're very open. We tell them what's
Mm-hmm.
happening. And it's also relatively easy because they've got very clear metrics. When you have very clear metrics, it's really easy to map progress.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and you find that also in sales teams. Sales teams are notoriously the easiest to manage
Yes.
performance of because it's very, very clear.
Right.
Um, so this team, we've managed to give them very clear objectives, both
Mm-hmm.
as a team, an individual, and as an organization. It's made them a very successful team.
Okay.
Um, Constant contact, open communication, clear, simple, defined goals that really let the individuals know what their contribution is,
Mm-hmm.
and also making sure that we brought events in for them locally where leaders from outside of their particular country will come and present to them and enjoy some celebration together for their successes.
Right. Thank you so much, Paul, for this very wonderful and insightful discussion. Hopefully, this
Well,
will help our viewers and readers. This concludes our episode. And if you like this show, then please do like and subscribe. Until next time.